Hello, and hello to all the viewers. Nice to be here.
This year's Earth Hour really taking on heightened significance. Tell us why.
Well, the whole effort around climate change is to do with all of us playing our part, government, business, individuals, to hold the average global increase in temperature to below 2 degrees. Beyond 2 degrees, we start seeing runaway impacts of climate change where what we do as humans may no longer be able to stem the tide. And so, we are refocusing Earth Hour on this challenge, which is the biggest challenge that has ever faced humanity, and where we also stand to bring the rest of the planet down with us. At
Louise,
the end of this year, as they've done for the last 20 years, world governments meet under the auspices of the UN to discuss what governments should do in relation to this challenge. And what we wish they would do is all get in the room together, say, look, we really understand that we've got to limit our emissions of those gases which cause climate change, roll up our sleeves, and how are we going to do this together? And what has been happening for 20 years is that the politics behind the governments have led to the fact that there's all kinds of negotiating and jockeying happening, and we've seen very little real movement on the issue, and governments really have to step up to their historical responsibility now.
It does sound, Louise, like the window of opportunity to turn things around is fast closing. And like you say, yes, climate change is the biggest threat to nature and humanity in the 21st century. And it's become nearly impossible to overstate this threat. Speak to us of its impact on Southern Africa specifically in terms of agriculture, rainfall, and perhaps dwindling natural resources even.
Yes. So I think you've put your finger exactly on one of the very fundamental issues, is that our food and water systems are essential to human life. And with climate change, we start messing with our water systems and our climate, which then impacts on our agriculture. So in South Africa, I don't know the statistics for broader Africa, but in South Africa, 63% of the water that we use and of our water supply is used for agriculture. We now going to see changes where the west of the country will become increasingly drier and the east of the country stormier. And this is going to mess with our water supply, which is already oversubscribed. It's going to mean crops that we've historically been growing in certain areas won't be able to grow there anymore without perhaps a lot more irrigation. And as I say, in a water-stressed country, our water supplies are under stress already.
Yes,
I mean, we heard what's going on
and Louise, we did see scorching, record maximum breaking temperatures across the Western Cape just last week and this week. How strong a position is South Africa to lead or influence this battle? We are an active member of the AU, a very vocal member of the G77, and what's the poised to become a southern engine of global economic growth?
So I think that South Africa punches above its weight on the international climate arena. As a developing country, we could go there and make the argument that, it's not our industrialization that has caused this climate problem. It's really up to the so-called developed countries to take action. But we have actually gone there saying that we will do our part. We will do our part in such a way that we still guarantee a better life for all our citizens and residents, but we're not sitting on our hands and expecting everybody else to do the work for us. So I think that way that South Africa acts in the international arena really sets a tone for the rest of the world to follow. The one thing about our country is we have some contradictions back home. We are not moving fast enough on putting renewable energy into our energy supply mix. we all are aware of the stresses that Eskom is under in order to supply the energy needs of the country. We really can do this without coal, and in the next 10 years that it would perhaps take to get a nuclear-fired power station fleet of them up and running, we could rather spend all of that money on renewable energy and be a fossil-free country at some point.
Very quickly, Louise, before I let you go, Environmental Affairs Minister Edmund Molewa just yesterday called on South Africans to recycle, as only 10% of our population is engaged currently in recycling waste. What can ordinary South Africans do in their own households to tackle climate change, and how do we best raise awareness at this level?
So, firstly, to just acknowledge that not everybody in the country has electricity in their homes, but for those of us that do, you know, I think the kinds of things that have long been said about being very energy efficient in your home and switching off stuff that you're not using, and using less, and, you know, your geyser and getting a blanket on your geyser and so on. But let me talk about two other areas that are not commonly spoken of. And the one is our transport and the other is our food. We almost cannot think of a single product in our modern lives that doesn't at some point involve electricity or transport. And those are the two biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions when we burn coal or petrol. So if you think about your food and try to choose food that didn't have to come from miles and miles away, that is seasonal, so, you know, it didn't have to be shipped from some other part of the world, that isn't packaged in millions of petrol-based plastics, that is really one element that we can make a big difference. And a big element of our food issue is, and that comes in a way back to recycling, because it's about things you put in your bin, is the amount of food waste. So embedded in your litre of milk is thousands of litres of water that, you know, from the food that was grown, the cow that had to drink, to shipping it to you. So every little millimeters of milk that you throw away, you're throwing away everything that went into making that milk. So please don't waste.
I'm afraid I'll have to
milk.
Thank you for sharing.
I could go on forever.
I can see that. Thank you for sharing your insight with us on the PM News Desk. That was Louise Naude, the WWF's National Climate Change Officer in South Africa. Well, time to take a short